How's it going, everybody? And welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Brock at the Buster podcast. We've got a lot to talk about, including the Cavaliers draft pick from last Thursday, my winners and losers from last Thursday's NBA draft, what I believe the Cavaliers will do in free agency, and we've got some Cavs news to cover that came out this afternoon. But before we get started, I'd like to tell you that all of my social media channels are in a Linktree link down below, so you can access all of those there. Follows would be greatly appreciated. And obviously for this channel, please like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Cavs stick to their plan in the draft. Last Thursday night at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, the Cavs held possession of 4 picks between the first and second rounds. Picks number 14, 39, 49, and 56. Despite the Cavs being rumored to be in talks with the Spurs surrounding All-Star guard DeJounte Murray, the Cavs held firm and made all 4 selections, nothing flashy. The Cavs did what they had to do last Thursday. Cavs take NBA Agbaji at 14. When the number 14 pick came around, despite having players with, quote, greater potential and A.J. Griffin and Malachi Branham still on the board, they chose swingman Ochai Agbaji out of Kansas. Agbaji fits all the Cavs' needs, a three-point shooter and length, something the Cavs lack on the perimeter. Agbaji is also one of the most NBA-ready players in this class. At 22 years old, Agbaji can and I think will contribute right away. Like Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com said in one of his articles last week, this pick proves the Cavs are in win-now mode, which makes me very optimistic. At pick number 39, the Cavs selected center Khalifa Diop out of Senegal. Diop clearly has the size, standing at 7'1". Diop can also run the floor extremely well, run the pick and roll, which again, as I said in last episode, is a Cavs staple. And said over and over again in last week's presser. Sorry, these notes were made last week, and I just didn't have a chance to record the podcast last week, so that's why I'm doing it for you today. So if I make a little mistake about today and last week and so on and so forth, that is why. But back to Khalifa Diop. He wanted to contribute on the defensive end of the floor, which unfortunately I did not see when putting these notes together in a highlight package I watched of Diop. But in my opinion, I could also see Diop going back overseas to get playing time this next season. Don't forget, players can do that. Teams can allow that, obviously, if they, obviously don't sign an NBA contract, but they still hold the players' draft rights. So if Diop decides to go back to Senegal, he can do that, but he is still a quote-unquote Cavalier. Pick number 49, a familiar name showed up in this pick, and the name is Mobley. Not Evan Mobley, his older brother Isaiah. Again, yes, he is the older brother of Cavaliers budding superstar Evan Mobley. Isaiah is a better shooter than Evan Mobley. Can also run the floor like Evan, likes to post up as well. There is some true talent he possesses. With that said, though, I think Isaiah will see a lot of time this year with the Cleveland Charge, the Cavs G League affiliate. And finally, pick number 56, forward Luke Tavares out of Perth, Australia. And Tavares can catch, then drive to the basket at a very good clip. Now, he also was a very solid transition player in the open court and is good on the offensive glass. I also believe, much like Diop, Tavares will go back to Australia to refine his game. And a lot of fans asked this very question after the draft last Thursday. Why all bigs in round 2? And I think the answer is quite simple. The Cavs are looking for a guy to back up Jared Allen on a very low price tag. Period. End of story. That makes all the sense in the world because, as we all know, the Cavs really, last year didn't have any real backup centers. Yes, Ed Davis was brought in, but he was used more as a salary filler, a cap filler, a locker room leader type of guy. But with that said, with these 3 selections, I think the Cavs are truly now looking for the backup for the future, not right now anyway, the future backup of Cavs All-Star Jared Allen. And now, the winners and losers of last week's draft. First off, let's start with the winners. The Detroit Pistons. The Pistons continue to stockpile young talent around Cade Cunningham by drafting Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. Also, by doing this, the Pistons now open the door to spend in free agency, going after 2 of the most sought-after restricted free agents in DeAndre Ayton of the Phoenix Suns and Miles Bridges. Speaking of those 2, I have no further update on the RFA status of DeAndre Ayton, but I do have an update on the Hornets restricted free agent Miles Bridges. Hornets general manager Mitch Kupchak at a press conference introducing new Hornets head coach Steve Clifford, which I'm not a huge fan of, but that's for another episode. But Kupchak said that they are going to bring him back. Just like that, we are going to bring him back. And you can't get more direct than that, despite there being a few speculative posts on Miles Bridges' social media last night. Another winner for the NBA draft last week, in my opinion, was the San Antonio Spurs. Much like the Pistons, the Spurs are also stockpiling with young talent with serious potential after, of course, the greatness they've sustained for 20-plus years with Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. They drafted Jeremy Sohan, Bradham, and Blake Wesley, all in the first round for the San Antonio Spurs. The losers of the NBA draft. A lot of people are not going to agree with me on this, but hear me out. The Oklahoma City Thunder. Yes, they did draft potentially the best big in this draft in Chet Holmgren, but with what they did with the number 11 pick they acquired for the New York Knicks, they drafted a complete project in Ousmane Dieng, who I did not want the Cavs to select, and thank God he wasn't there when the Cavs picked. Which makes no sense for Oklahoma City due to the fact they now have a big logjam. They have Darius Bazley. They have Pokuševski. They have Holmgren. They have Ousmane Dieng. To me, it just doesn't make much sense. What they need in Oklahoma City is wings. They don't have enough of those. They need wings, and they drafted a wing in Jalen Williams, but that's about it. Chet Holmgren could be the best big in this draft, so I don't, say they're losers for that, but it's what they did after that I am in serious question of. And the second loser of this draft is the New York Knicks. The Knicks traded out of the first round entirely. Yes, they did acquire 3 first-round picks and got out of the contract for Kevin Walker. But I think that means they will overpay the living hell out of Jalen Brunson. The Knicks, after the draft, were left with a lot more questions than answers. Now, let's go on to the news that came through just a little while ago from the Cleveland Cavaliers. Sexton officially an RFA as the Cavs extend a qualifying offer. What is a qualifying offer? For those of you who do not know what that means, here is the best way I know how to explain it in the simplest of terms. It is the NBA's version of a franchise tag. It's exactly what it is. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that the player who is an RFA can't move elsewhere. So, with Sexton, the Cavs now have the opportunity to match any offer given to Sexton or presented to him on paper. Obviously, the Cavs have to know so they can match it, and they have 24 hours to do so. If the Cavs do not match it in those 24 hours, Sexton walks away from the Cavs without the Cavs getting anything in return. And I do not believe that is going to happen. The Cavs guards Sexton and R.J. Nembhard Jr. were extended their qualifying offers this afternoon, like I just said. Here is my opinion. I would expect the Cavs and Sexton to agree to a deal as soon as Thursday, with an agreement of, in my opinion, roughly a 4-year, $18 million deal per season. And I do not, and I know the Cavs do not, want to go over $20 million with Sexton. That is according to Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com. This is so that Sexton could look more appealing to teams in the future, maybe as soon as Thursday, in a sign-and trade. The Cavs can take this risk due to the fact that they have the leverage due to Sexton coming off of season-ending ACL surgery. The Cavs also did not mention this guy's name, which I think means they did not offer this player a qualifying offer. The player that I'm referring to is guard Brennan Goodwin. And I believe it would have been a 2-way qualifying offer, but I don't think the Cavs offered it because, like I mentioned earlier, I think they're saving that roster spot for Isaiah Mobley. Now, finally, before I conclude the episode, who should the Cavs pursue in free agency? With free agency fast approaching, and even addressing a need in last Thursday's drafts, the Cavs have 2 gaping holes in this roster: the backup point guard position and also the backup center. First, we're going to start with the point guards. Every Cav fan knows this name, Ricky Rubio. Rubio is often being the first name that comes to mind for the Cavs this summer because of how well he played with Darius Garland in particular. But the fact that Rubio is coming off an ACL tear and the fact that he is aging is a very, very big concern for me personally. A report came out yesterday that the Cavs, like we already know, are very interested in re-signing Ricky Rubio. But here's the thing. Is he going to be 100% by October? I doubt that. I completely doubt that, actually. So again, are you going to put yourself in a position where you have to play Darius Garland 40 minutes a night? The answer to that question is no. That is why I think the Cavs do not use their mid-level exception, which they have available to them on Ricky Rubio. What I do with Rubio is simply this. Ricky, you enjoyed it here. You enjoyed your time here. You understood why we made the move we did last February. We'd love to bring you back, but on a minimum contract. And at this point in his career, to be on a competitive team that has a chance to make the playoffs, etc., is all that Ricky Rubio should be really worrying about at this point in his career. So I think if the Cavs even offered him the minimum, I think Ricky Rubio will accept and will be a Cleveland Cavalier entering the 2022-23 season. Another name you all should be looking out for. It is not Tyus Jones, because I think Tyus Jones is out of the Cavs' price range. But the guy who the Cavs can use the mid-level exception on is a guy who helped beat us in the play-in tournament last season. His name is DeLon Wright. Wright would be a great add to use the Cavs' mid-level exception on, as I just pointed out, due to the fact that Wright is a plus defender who is another guy like Rubio who can certainly, or who could most certainly, or is most certainly, grammar error, capable of playing with Garland in the Cavs backcourt, because he proved he could with an elite scorer like Trae Young last season in Atlanta. Now on to the backup center market. And the first name that keeps popping into my head that isn't going to cost the Cavs a lot of money, that you can pay the minimum to for a year, and if you want to keep him around, keep signing him to 1-year deals and so on and so forth. His name, you all should know this name by now. His name is Tristan Thompson. Thompson would be a great fit due to the fact it would ease the pressure off of Evan Mobley to be the backup 5 on the roster. And you could also possibly add him for the veteran minimum, like I just said. Also, obviously, something that is very important is, of course, his experience. He was a part of the 2016 NBA champion Cleveland Cavaliers. He also helps the young bigs, the Cavs on the roster, the young bigs, such as Jared Allen, such as Evan Mobley, such as Dean Wade, maybe even such as Lauri Markkanen, because Markkanen is only 24 years old. But the guy who would look so good in wine and real gold, again, is this man, JaVale McGee. McGee would probably cost a little bit more, but McGee, like Rubio, has experience playing with the majority of this roster, including Darius Garland, Isaac Okoro, Colin Sexton, Kevin Love, Jetty Osman, etc., etc., etc. And also something that could really, make the Cavs front office really think about McGee is that he knows GB Bickerstaff's system, which always helps. And that'll do it for Season 2, Episode 2 of the Brock at the Buzzer podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Brock Kowalski. Once again, all of my social media links are in a Linktree link below. And finally, before I let you go, please like the video, share the video, and subscribe. And I'll see you all on the next episode of the Brock at the Buzzer podcast. And before I let you go, just a reminder, NBA free agency begins in just under 48 hours. at 6 p.m. Eastern on Thursday evening. So stay tuned for a lot more information regarding the NBA craziness that's about to go down. I'll see you all very soon.